Good evening, everyone. Welcome to First Day Ballet Theater's Q&A with the artists of Triple Bill. I'm Joan Beatson, and I'm the Director of Advancement here at First Day Ballet Theater. Triple Bill opens next Friday, that's February 17th, at the Baby Grand. Friday the 17th at 7 p.m., Saturday the 18th at 7 p.m., and Sunday the 19th at 2 p.m. And right now, I want to remind you we have a buy one, get one free sale going on until tonight at midnight for the Friday and Saturday shows. So check that out on our website. FSBT is excited to have three brilliant choreographers who've created new pieces for Triple Bill. Our first choreographer, Viktor Plotnikov, unfortunately, he could not be here tonight. He is on the West Coast teaching, 3 hours behind, but we're very happy to welcome Blake Krapels. Thank you. And Zach Kapeluck, our other two choreographers. Thank you for joining us, guys. And you're going to learn more about them as the night goes on. I'd also like to introduce our panel of company dancers. And I'm going to start with Leo McGrath. Hello. We're going to hear more about these dancers tonight, too. Leo, Kate Heulitt, Angela Zielen, Taylor Ciampi, Hunter Behrens, and Antonio Rosario. Welcome, dancers. And now I'm excited to introduce to you our moderator, A.T. Moffett. A.T. has an extensive background as a dancer, choreographer, and dance educator. She held teaching positions at Washington College, UD, and Winona State University. She has an MFA in dance from the University of Oregon, an MA in urban affairs and public policy from UD, and she currently serves as executive director at the Delaware Institute for Arts and Education, which delivers arts integrated programming and professional development in schools and early learning centers throughout the state. And AT is originally from Kentucky. So welcome, AT.
Well, thank you so much. It's so nice to be here with you. It's so nice to be here with you and all the folks on Zoom and to have gotten to watch you dance in your class tonight. It's just really nice to be here with you all. I just would like to say a word of how wonderful it is for your artistic team and your leadership to have commissioned three original works from fresh and exciting choreographers, and that you're presenting that here in Delaware. So I just want to start from that place of gratitude and how much that brings to our state. So let's get started. I'll start. I'm thinking about, the arc of our conversation. It's always great to start with introductions. I can't quite tell who to look at, so I'm going to just try to live into the camera. Just try to live into the vibe of the space. But choreographers, can you, let's see, I'll start with you, Blake. Can you tell us your full name, where you're from, and the third thing? We dancers, we love threes. Can you tell us your name, your full name, where you're from, and a couple of important highlights from your background that have shaped you as an artist and brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Blake Krapels. I'm from New Jersey. I'm currently living in between Philadelphia and Aspen right now. And some highlights of my professional career in dancing was growing up at the age of 3, starting dance at a competition studio, going to the Juilliard school. I think a big thing that was kind of catapulted my love for choreography was doing a program called Young Arts when I was a senior in high school. I won for choreography, and I think that kind of sparked my love and interest in choreography. And then after I went to Juilliard, and then I was freelancing, danced with some companies in New York, danced with Ballet X in Philadelphia for 4 seasons, and now I'm currently dancing with a company in Aspen called Dance Aspen. So I've been around a bit, and those are some highlights. There's obviously a lot more in there, but
thank you. I appreciate you lifting those up. Zach, can I ask you the same question? Just tell us your full name, where you're from, and some highlights that have shaped you into the artist that you are today.
Totally. My name is Zachary Kapeluck. I'm originally from Pittsburgh. I've lived here in Philadelphia for about 10 years now. I started dancing at a young age. I was like 3 years old, and my first form of dance was actually Ukrainian folk dance before I started doing ballet or any other modern styles. And that was very formative on the rest of my career and very formative on my choreographic style as well, I would say. I went to Point Park University, got my BFA there, which was also very formative. It allowed me a lot of opportunities to explore choreography and composition. When I joined Ballet X in 2013, it was pretty much full-time dancing, so there wasn't as much chance to choreograph, but I would still delve into it here and there when I had the chance. And now that I'm retired from Ballet X and trying to pursue this full time, it's been really fun to have the space to create and explore new things with these dancers.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dancers, I'd like to ask you guys the similar question. So let's see. My impulse is to start with Antonio and work our way down. That is what my gut is telling me. So can you tell us, your full name, where you're from? I'd also like to know how long you've been with First State Ballet Theater, and then some highlights from your background as well.
Sure. So my name is Antonio Rosario. I'm originally from Dominican Republic, but was raised mainly in New York City. And this is my first season with First State Ballet Theater, so 5 months, I think. And I think some of my highlights have been to perform a lot of the classics in the repertoire in classical ballet, but also to be able to perform flamenco, which is another passion of mine on the side. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. I'm Hunter Behrens. I'm originally from Hawaii, and it is my first year, but I joined a little bit into the season. I think it was like 2-3-ish months into the season. And I think highlights for me have just been being able to travel around the continental US. Since I was 15. I moved to North Carolina to go to UNCSA. Then I went to the Houston Ballet Academy. And from there, I went to Orlando Ballet, danced there for a year. And now I'm here.
That's quite the journey. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Ciampi. I am from Baltimore, Maryland. This is my second season at First State Ballet. And a few highlights for me, kind of like Hunter, I've traveled around the world a lot dancing. I left home at 14 and studied at the Rock School for Dance Education for 3 years. After that, I moved to Amsterdam and I trained at the Dutch National Ballet Academy for a year. After that, I went to Toronto and I was an apprentice with the National Ballet of Canada. I danced with Atlanta Ballet for a few years and now I'm here. So just been all over, seeing the world, dancing. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angela. I am born and raised here in Delaware, and I never left. Just kidding. A few times I've left. But I've had the pleasure of dancing so many classical roles here, and it's been wonderful. And this is my 8th season with the company.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kate Heulitt, and I'm from New Jersey. This is my 2nd season with the company. My dance career started at a competition studio, and then from there, I went to Marymount Manhattan College. And I lived in New York for 4 years, and then I ended up here.
Hi, my name's Lee McGrath. I grew up in Savannah, Georgia. I started dancing when I was 7 years old. Most of my formative experience in dance was actually in tap and jazz. I did tap and jazz from age 7 until I was 14. And then at that point, I switched almost entirely to ballet. That it kind of caught my attention, and the athleticism involved, the technical push that was present in ballet really intrigued me. And then when I was a senior in high school, I decided to pursue more professional training and went to Next Generation Ballet in Florida. And from there, bounced all around the country, training, dancing with different companies. And now I've landed myself here, and it is my 2nd year in First State Ballet Theater.
Yeah. it's exciting. It's really nice to hear about your travels, the locations that you're from, and to, think about the winding path that brought you here, or maybe the direct path that brought you here. That's really interesting. We're so glad that you're here in Delaware. I have a question for the choreographers next. Let's see, Zach, I'll start with you this time. Can you tell us a little bit about your artistic influences? What choreographers are you excited about? Who are you following?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, I would say direct artistic influences. I had the pleasure for 10 years while I was at Ballet X to work with Matthew Neenan, the co-founder of the company. I probably was involved in at least 8 to 10 world premiere creations with him. So he's had a huge influence on me choreographically. I often find myself throwing in little isms of his into my work, always with, an homage to him. But he's influenced me a lot. As far as other choreographers that I enjoy watching, a lot of European choreographers, a lot of the classic masters, Yuri Killian, Forsyth, like you can't go wrong with those guys. They're just so good at their craft. But a lot of newer choreographers are out there as well that are just really exciting to watch. So I kind of try to keep my lenses open to whatever comes across my way. Yeah.
Thank you. I like the gesture that you did too. Let's keep it open. Thank you. Blake, I'll throw the same question to you. Who are some of your artistic influences and choreographers that you feel inspired by in your work?
Yeah, so I absolutely am in love with Crystal Pite's work. I think the way she tells stories with the movement is so incredibly beautiful and so poignant and so specific, and I just am really affected by her work. And with that said, I'm also inspired by Matthew Neenan. I worked with him a lot. He has a great way of cultivating an environment and creating something very specific. And I think I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of different choreographers, and even if I don't like their work necessarily, I still can take something from it and then apply that to my own work, whether it's a composition element that I enjoy or that a composition element that I don't enjoy. Just seeing what is nice and what I can bring to my own work. I'm always trying to keep my vision and inspiration open, so I don't just get stuck with the same constant repetition in my own work.
Thank you. I like how you use the term. Well, first, I think it's so interesting that you both referenced Matthew Neenan. Did your time over with Ballet X overlap? Do you all know each other? Yes.
Yes, we did together.
I love it. Yes. That's wonderful. So you use the phrase cultivating an environment. And when I think about that, I think of your piece. I feel as though you have cultivated a really compelling environment in your piece, The Fire in Which We Burn. So I'm torn. Do I ask you about the environment or do I ask the dancers? I'm going to ask the dancers. Would anyone volunteer to kind of speak to the piece, The Fire in Which We Burn, in your experience working inside this environment that he's created, this world? Thanks, Hunter.
Yeah, so I think it was a really great process. Blake was very open to having input from the dancers. And so I think there was a nice dialogue created every day when we were developing the choreography for the piece. We'd have like a set phrase that we'd learn, and then we'd go ahead and design pieces here and there, but then we'd use the qualities of how different dancers would react to the choreography, and Blake would find ways to put that in the piece. And so I think in that way, it also it not only reflects the vision that Blake had for the piece, but I think it also reflects uniquely all the dancers that are in the piece. So I do think that in that way, it does reflect this company in a way that it only could if it was choreographed here on the
Mm.
specific dancers that it was.
Well said. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add to piggyback on what Hunter shared?
I think Hunter did a great job summing up our time with Blake. But I just love the fire crackling in the background of the piece. I sit by the fire every night at drinking my tea. And I think that really just kind of helped him incorporate what he was trying to bring across. I hope he did a good job of that. And just, gathering by a fire and how special and intimate those moments are.
I think that connection, I mean, I just got to see one rehearsal one day in the studio, and I had my, my coat and my hat and everything on, but I really got that sense of a connection. And something that I remember writing in my notes was kind of the individual and the collective, kind of both, some coming to the foreground, background, and sometimes my eye being drawn to an individual, while others I would, just kind of sit back and take in the full ensemble. So I can't wait to see it on the stage. All right, let's see. Another dancer question. Can someone, would you mind to tell us a little bit about how you got started as a dancer? What was that first seed that made someone in your life say, Antonio, he needs to dance, or I see him dancing, or
So I've been dancing forever, honestly. I started dancing as soon as I could walk. I was probably barely older than 1 when it was most noticeable. And then from that point on, just continued exposure to dance. We'd go to all kinds of arts festivals growing up. And after going to an Irish festival, Terrafesh, we ended up watching every single dance performance the entire day, probably 4.5 hours of dancing. And at the end of the day, I said, I want to do Irish step. Well, in Savannah, it's very expensive. So my mom looked into other options for me to dance. And I ended up tap dancing. And after 1 class, I was hooked and just ran with it. And I've been dancing since.
So I actually started I started off doing karate as a kid. And then when I was in, I think 1st grade, I was naturally really flexible as a kid as well. And my 1st grade teacher was also a dance teacher and noticed that I was naturally very flexible. So she recommended to my mom that I go to the local studio, which is a dance and gymnastics studio. So I started off with gymnastics. And then I was always curious to know what was going on inside the dance room. So that's how I started dance.
That's so unexpected. I love it. I'm going to ask the choreographers a question next. Let's see. Let's see, Zach, I'll ask you first this time. Can you tell us the name of your piece for Triple Bill and your inspiration for it?
Sure. Yeah. So the piece, the working title that we're working with right now is Selo. And Selo is a word in many Slavic languages that basically just means village. And that's kind of the theme that we're working with, is that we're trying to create a village, a community on stage. I grew up in a very kind of not sequestered, but small Ukrainian community in Western Pennsylvania, where everyone knows everyone. I always tell people, if you've seen the movie, like My Big Fat Greek Wedding, that was my life, except it was Ukrainians. So the piece is very reflective of a lot of the ways that I grew up, but it's also about how a community can bring 2 people together, and how the integration of a community can bring 2 people together, and that cycle kind of just like proliferates itself, and you learn from each other and evolve and progress as that happens. But really, I just wanted to create this sense of community on stage.
Thank you. Dancers, a chance to respond. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience inside his piece?
I think the whole process has been kind of like spiritual in a sense because the music sounds very almost like I'm going into mass. It's the components of the music is very like ritualistic, I guess, in a way. And so like to me, I find it very prayerful. And so I'm trying to connect to that part of who I am as a person. And there's a community in that. So to me, it's like I can really connect to Zach's piece in that way. You know, there's a lot of moments where it's a lot of fun and we're all smiling and we're trying to, you know, bring everyone together and trying to create this community that he has, that, you know, well, he has in mind, but we're trying to portray that through the movement that he has created. So it's been a joy to kind of collaborate with him in that as well. So yeah,
I love it. It is such a gift as a dancer to be able to feel you're in a collaborative process
Absolutely.
with the choreographer. That's wonderful. Wonderful to hear. I'd like to lift up Viktor into the space. He's not here with us tonight, but his work is very much present in the show. And I was so glad to get to see a run of it the other day. We're going to just imagine that he's here with us because we know he is in spirit and the movement is in your bodies. But can one of the dancers, would someone be willing to talk about your process of working with Viktor and his choreography and kind of what you've gained from getting to work with him in his process?
I can talk a little. So I got a lot of no tailors, a lot, almost like too many times a day. No, but Viktor's great to work with. I've worked with him a few times before I came to First State Ballet, and then a few times while I've been here twice. He usually kind of just comes in and he will have like the music playing, like he has this idea of what he wants, or he'll think of certain things and we start to workshop and see what works, what doesn't, what grips work, what lifts work. And it's kind of confusing to the dancers at first because there's no like in his mind, like he knows what he's doing, obviously, so it all makes sense. But we learn like so many different things. And then all of a sudden we put it together and it'll be like this part first and then this part and then this part comes together. Same thing. It's like a collaborative like experience. Like sometimes we do things that he likes and he's like, we're going to use that. We're going to do that. Very much created on us though. Anybody else have anything to say?
Thank you.
So Viktor's process is really interesting because he comes into the room with an idea of things he wants to accomplish, ideas he wants to get out, but he doesn't always have the exact idea formulated. It's more he has the big outline piece. He has an idea of what he wants a section to look like. And then with the dancers, he will kind of throw everything at the wall for a while until something lands, and then he'll build off of that piece that sticks, and it'll keep building and building and building. And over the course of a day, you might spend sometimes 30, 40 minutes working on one small section, and other days you might blast through 2-3 minutes of choreography in a couple hours. So it's a really broad and varied process, but every single time it's fun. It's always fun. We always get to try new things. It's given me a lot of confidence in dancing because it's given me an opportunity to try lots of things that I otherwise would have never done with my body. And the outcome is always just stunning.
It was very exciting to watch. I wrote in my notes, elegantly acrobatic. I mean, just so pushing the physical form and even the ballet line, something pushing it past what my eye is used to associating with ballet, but it makes it very exciting. So thanks for sharing your experience from inside Viktor's piece. Blake, I have a question for you next. Can you tell us the title of your piece and a little bit about your process for creating it?
Yeah, so the title of my piece is called The Fire in Which We Burn. And it really started, there was an image that I had that had everyone lined up in a line. And at the end of it, they kind of were like floating into the sky. And it kind of just made me think and reflect on society's constant fascination with just keep running and running and going, doing all these things. The fastest you can do it, the more you do it, the better you do it. It's just like that's the goal. And then I wanted to take that idea and I wanted to find a tender, more reflective part of it, like the moments that when we're running, what are we missing? Who are we not talking to? Who are we not seeing? Who are we not hugging? All those interactions that we miss when we're just constantly just running ahead, not looking at anything out of the corner of our eyes. So that's kind of like the idea of it. And then I had some music issues along the way, but I think that the issues actually propelled me into a more clear space with what I wanted to create. One of my good friends from Juilliard, who I went to school with, is the composer of one of the beautiful piano tracks, and his track had the fire burning sound, and it just made it really come all together with that sense of, when you're sitting by a fire with the people you love, your friends, your family, everything kind of stops for a second. You're able to just be there in that moment. You aren't questioning anything outside of it, but you can really just reflect and be there. So I think that the fire sound came in and it kind of just like wrapped all those ideas and images up for me. And then that's where the title came from, The Fire in Which We Burn.
The composer that you've worked with, have you worked with him or her before? Do you often work with composers in your
Yeah,
work?
so he was in my class at Juilliard and he composed, we have like the senior production, that's like our final project at the end of the school year, and he made my music for that. And it's actually quite interesting because we kind of fell out of touch these last couple of years. And as I was searching for music, I was like, I should reach out to him. I should connect with him again. And it's been like the most amazing thing to just reach out and be like, hey, I'm creating for this piece. Do you have any music? And he's like, here you go. Let's make something to it. And it's been amazing.
That's interesting. It's interesting to kind of hear the multiple centers of collaboration that happen, to what we get to enjoy together on the stage. That's really interesting. So I'm looking at the chat, and so I'm mindful that maybe it would be a good time. I check our time. We're about halfway there. So I think it would be a good time to bring in some questions from the chat and some comments. So forgive me as I just straight up read them. This is from Marcus Dominguez. To the choreographers, how much of your choreography is influenced by your pool of performers? Anyone willing to jump on that great question?
Go for it, Blake.
I think that there's a nice balance. I like to come into the studio with I think I have a clear vocabulary or use of movement that I'd like to use, but one of the best things that I've experienced in a collaborative process in a new creation is being empowered as a dancer and feeling like my voice is important in the studio. So like I always wanted to honor the dancers in the space. I wanted them to feel like they could make choices if they wanted to. They may not be the best choices. We may laugh about that choice. They may be the most amazing choice, but I want them to feel empowered to make a choice, make a decision. And so they feel comfortable in order to give their best to the process. So I think it's definitely 50-50. I have clear ideas, clear movements that I want to portray and physicalize, and emotions I want to physicalize, but without the dancers, the piece would not be anything of what it is. I'm only one person. If we put together 12 minds, it's going to be a lot better of a piece than just one solo voice.
My educator heart just soars when you say that. There's multiple centers of knowledge in any space. That's really, it's inspiring to hear you say that. Let's see, Marcus also has a question for the dancers. To the dancers, each choreographer has their own signature or style. What are some of your favorite experiences working with these choreographers? It's a good one, Marcus. Thank you. Anybody? Favorite moments? Favorite experiences?
I mean, in terms of working with Viktor, he's going to push you to your limit every single day. He's going to make you try things that are uncomfortable, odd, interesting, and you don't know what you're going to walk into each day doing. And it makes every day a lot of fun. And Zach's process is very different from that, in that he has a kind of set, kind of choreographic vocabulary that he's planning on using walking into it, that he's pre-planned a lot of, and then he's utilizing how we interact with that to integrate us into the piece in a really personal way. So very different processes in that.
Really interesting. Anybody else willing to talk about your experiences and with any of the choreographers for the bill, triple bill?
I just want to say, kind of in general, with working with multiple choreographers, they always bring new movement to your body, and it always pushes you to discover new movement within yourself and pushes your own boundaries. So I think I learn from every single choreographer that I work with, and learn new movement every single time I work with a new person.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I could tell. I had a feeling.
I just when I first started doing Viktor's work, I felt so strange, and my body just, I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like, oh, I felt so silly. But I think that it really teaches you like the range that dancers can go, and the influence that choreographers have on us to expand our vocabulary and how we move, because I was trained really classically, and so I did not do a lot of contemporary for years until I started dancing professionally. So doing Viktor's work and then doing Zach's work was like, my body was like, wow, all these new words, all these, like way of movement was really challenging but refreshing also, because then I can expand the way I tell stories. So
challenging but refreshing. I mean, isn't that why we do ballet? Isn't that why we dance? I love that. Thank you. Let's see. I want to take a moment for our friends who are in the space with us. Are there any? I have some more questions. There's more questions coming up in the chat, but are there any responses that you have to something that the dancers or the choreographers have said that was interesting to you? Or do you have a question? Or yes, please.
I'd love to hear from Blake and Zach how they got started in choreography, how they became interested in that versus performance.
Lovely. I'm not sure if you could hear the question, but Joan is interested in hearing you speak to how you got started in choreography, and I guess kind of transitioned from performance into a choreographic focus. Anybody?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I started really kind of exploring choreography in college. I mentioned I went to Point Park University. And in the BFA program, you're required to take composition classes, so you have to choreograph. And there's also a lot of opportunities to choreograph on your own for student showcases and things like that. So I did a ton of it when I was in college, and then I also got pulled into choreographing High School Musicals actually at the same time, which is probably the last time that I worked with a cast of over 20, which I'm doing right now. So that's been a bit of a whirlwind. I haven't done that since college, which was well over 10 years ago. So that's been fun. But actually, funnily enough, the first commission that I ever received outside of Ballet X, because I was there for 10 years, to do something on dancers and be paid for it was at First Date, when Pasha brought me in last year to choreograph on the Upfront on Market program, and I did a duet on two of the dancers, and it was wonderful. And since then, I've been like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I'll keep trying to do this. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And I think that Pasha, I think that speaks to you for opening that door. I think that sometimes we have to have that tap, right? Come do this thing. It's like, oh, I can do this thing. So thanks for sharing that and the start to your choreographic journey in college. Blake, could you respond to the same question about your choreographic start?
Yeah, so the first thing I ever choreographed was for a scholarship competition in high school called Young Arts. And I submitted for the choreography part. I choreographed a duet and I was chosen. And from that selection, I was then able to go to Miami for a week and present my choreography there. And then from that pool, I was selected to be a United States Presidential Scholar in the Arts for my choreography. So I got to create a piece for the Kennedy Center. So that kind of catapulted my love for choreography. And then in school, we took a lot of composition classes. And funnily, I thought they were kind of irritating. I was like, I know how to choreograph. I don't need these skills. But then looking back at it, and the more I progressed in the curriculum, I realized how important they are to have the space to try so many different things and to be put in a box to then in order to break out of your own box. Sometimes if you don't have like guidelines, you just are too far apart. So it's nice to have boundaries that you can then escape out of, and then you could put yourself back in the box or out of the box, whatever you want to do. And then from there, I choreographed for an APAP conference. I did a lot of different things out of school where I would just gather my friends together and be like, I want to create a piece. I will pay for the hotel. I will pay for the housing. I will pay for the food. Just come dance with me for a weekend and let's make a piece together. Let's film it and let's submit it places. So that kind of took that journey. And then at Ballet X, I did a few things, a few pop-up performances that I choreographed for, and I am premiering a piece with Dance Aspen in March, which I'm really excited about. It's a trio I choreographed in December. So I'm just kind of keeping my avenues open to all the choreography, and I'm super grateful that I was able to be given the opportunity to choreograph at First State. I'm really thankful that Pasha was able to open that door for me as well there.
Thank you. Thanks. This question comes from Abigail. This is a question for the dancers. Dancers, what was the most challenging thing about each piece for you? And so we'll ask somebody. I feel like you've spoken about Viktor's challenges. But can you speak to the challenges in Blake's? Can someone speak to the challenges in Blake's piece?
I think for me personally, one of the bigger challenges for me, I do have actually my original background, I started doing contemporary, so I think I'm a little more comfortable with the movement style, but I think that can be an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage if you let yourself get a little too carried away with interpreting the choreographer's movement too much. So I think that just making sure that their vision was represented in what you do, but also being able to bring yourself to what they're doing at the same time. I think finding that balance can be a challenge at times.
It does seem like a fine line. So can anyone speak to the same question in Blake's piece?
For me, it's the element of surprise. So I like to do my homework when we're like working on a new ballet, but for these pieces, I have no idea what they're going to bring to the table. I have no idea what the music's going to be like, what the movement's going to be like. So I find myself, and plus our repertoire here is more classical. So I really have to work much harder at this than I do. Well, I mean, I always have to work really hard, so I wouldn't want to say that, but it is challenging moving in different ways that I'm not used to and feeling sore in ways that I'm not used to and things of that nature.
That makes sense. I appreciate you bringing that up. As dancers, you are working across, contemporary and classical lines. Would anyone else like to talk about your experience, kind of embodying both worlds within the context of your season here at First State Ballet? Some challenges, joys, excitements, growth. You can talk about it, whatever. There's no detail too small or too big.
So during our performance of Upfront, I was able to perform in a classical piece and then 2 contemporary pieces. So that was a major challenge, having to make that switch in the middle of a show as well, because classical, you have to keep yourself put together, you have to hit the lines, but you have to still make it look elegant. And contemporary, you can kind of let loose a little bit more. So finding that balance is definitely super hard. But it's also a lot of fun. You get to play with it. I think doing contemporary and classical at the same time has helped. I'm more trained in contemporary than classical, so being able to do it at the same time has definitely helped my classical and has allowed me to push the boundaries a little bit more and dance it a little bit more instead of feeling like I have to hit the position, I have to do everything correctly. So getting a chance to do that in the same show really allowed me to feel a lot more comfortable in my classical. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well said. Choreographers, I'm curious about your negotiation of, your classical training and your contemporary training and how you think about that in your choreographic work. I'm realizing I'm seeing myself, I did this. And that makes it actually seem like it's in conflict when actually maybe it's like this. So I just want to check myself before I wreck myself. And I don't want to lead that in any certain way. But you all as dancers have also been trained classically. And in contemporary, I'm assuming, and then now you're choreographing. This is one piece of your larger body of work. But how do you blend those different stylistic sensibilities, and how do you think about it in your work?
Go ahead, Zach.
The tables have
it's a great question. And I think what's amazing about dancers out of like all artists is that we all speak a very similar language, but it's not audible. It's a language that we speak with our bodies. And whether we'd like to admit it or not, it all comes back to the French. So there is kind of that foundation in a codified technique that we're all familiar with. But then what's beautiful about a company like First State, and Blake and myself have danced with groups that it's the same thing, where you're bringing all these different backgrounds together and all these different styles of moving together. And also just, humans, even non-dancers, all have very particular ways of moving and things that make them unique as movers. So I think what's fun and challenging for me is taking that language that we all speak, but picking out the dialects that make it all different and combining those to create a new language. So in my mind, it's like every time you come together to create a new piece, we create a new language of dance together. And that's the language that we're speaking while we're doing this work, whether it's classical or contemporary or modern or whatever it might be. And in our particular work, I'm kind of bringing my folk background into the mix and combining it with the languages that all these dancers speak to create something new.
Yeah, I think that there's a nice, with the classical technique, there's a nice structure to it. There's found images within it. There's kind of like a formula in a lot of the repertory. So I think taking some of that and kind of deconstructing it is where I love to go with my choreography. I love and appreciate ballet in its purest form, and its simplest form, and its most beautiful form. And I want to take that image and reimagine it, shake it up, use the ideas of it, the positions of it, but not make it so known to the audience. Like, I think that there's something that's really comforting about seeing those images and seeing those ballets. But then there's also something really exciting about taking that structure and mash it up, tangle it up, twist it up, put it on its head, put it on its side, and just make it into something that's completely foreign to an audience member. And it's a hard thing to do because there's so much art being made in this world. But I think I'm most inspired by reshaping the different techniques we take on an everyday basis, including ballet, jazz, contemporary, tap dance. All of that informs everything.
I love that. Everything is everything.
Everything's everything.
Is it Lauryn Hill? Is that what she said? Everything is everything. So I want to check the time. So Marcus has another great question, and I think it's a good segue. I was kind of thinking of closing out with some thoughts of, words of wisdom from the choreographers, from teachers, from the dancers who are also teachers, I know. In thinking about how we share our gifts and help the next generation come along. And so I think Marcus has a great question that can segue into this kind of final section of our talk together. So, choreographers, do you have any advice to dancers and performers who want to enter the choreography space?
Just do it. I was talking to one of the dancers, Olivia, and she was like, I really like to choreograph. And I was like, well, do you do it? And she was like, no. And I was like, well, just get into the studio, use the dancers that are around you. They're your friends. They want to support you. They want to be a part of the creative process, and just start creating. There is no right way to create, but the more you can practice that side of your brain, of that creativity, of putting bodies in space together, of manipulating a phrase, of coming up with an entire idea, music, lights, costumes, the more you can keep practicing that part of your brain, the easier it will be to continue that. And it's always a moving organism, creating, choreographing. It's never like, I'm a choreographer, I'm set in this way. It's always developing and evolving. So just listen to that voice in yourself and just create, just do it.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. I mean, I think that one of the scariest things for young choreographers, and I am a young choreographer, is that thought of like, oh, this is a bad idea. And then you don't act on that idea because you've already told yourself, oh, this is a bad idea. But for me, it's like, there's no such thing as a bad idea. It's just that idea wasn't right for this time. That idea is better for something else, but that doesn't mean it's bad, and it's good that you tried it. So just not being afraid to do something wrong, because there really isn't anything that you can do wrong. You're creating art, it's coming from you. So if it's true and honest and from yourself, it can't be wrong. It maybe just didn't need to be right where you put it, but you stash it away and you use that idea later. So just, feeling I don't know, I guess it's getting over the fear of being wrong, because that's what makes cool art sometimes, is being wrong.
I hear a lot of courage as the subtext of what you're both sharing is, just committing to doing it, take that step. And I also appreciate what you're saying. I hear also in what you're saying that it's a practice, just like anything else. All those years in the studio, this is just another dimension of that same practice. I always used to love telling my students, you have everything you need to do this work. And when I think about what I would offer and to people who want to choreograph, you have everything you need. Just do it. Think of it as the continuum. Dancers, what about you? So I think the same question can be put to you. What would you say to aspiring dancers who want to enter this arena that you're in? What advice and suggestions might you offer?
I'll start. My biggest thing I would say is trust the process. Going into college, I didn't get into the college that I wanted to. Marymount wasn't my top school, but I ended up going there, and everything kind of fell into place that put me here. So it's kind of weird in a way when you look back on it. In that moment, you were maybe like super let down because you didn't get into your like top company or your top school or something like that. But in the end, you were supposed to end up where you were, and it will lead you to where you want to be.
Thank you.
Okay. I would say that it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. And some days are going to be better than others. and your path may not be straight, but it may zigzag. But if you do your job every day, you don't have to worry about the future.
I think I agree with both of the dancers as well. I think also you have to be like genuinely in love with this art form. I think there's it's very hard work, like Angela just said. So like you're gonna have days where you're doubting yourself and you're just saying, why am I doing this? This is insane. Like this is a lot of work, and your body's sore and you're just kind of like dreading sometimes coming into the studio, you know. But I think the love for the art form and the passion is what keeps you going, and just nothing else matters, because you know you really want to be involved in this art form and give your little part, because everyone's so uniquely different and you contribute something that helps this art form grow. So everyone has something to give. So if you allow yourself to do that, then we can see that special quality of yourself. So you have to love it, or else it's not going to work out. So make sure that's there first before you go on.
That is great advice. Anybody else? I see you with the hand.
So one of the hardest things in dancing is we stand in front of a mirror every day and surrounded by other beautiful dancers every day, and avoiding comparison to other dancers, avoiding comparison to, even yourself yesterday. Yesterday may have been a day when you could do 7 pirouettes, 8 pirouettes, 9 pirouettes. You might have had a crazy day. Tomorrow, you might do 2 pirouettes and have a real rough one. You might be turning sideways. And it's remembering that each and every day can and will be different. And if you continue along the road and avoid getting discouraged on the hard days, then the hard days over time get a little bit easier every single time they come around. So eventually, maybe that hard day is 3 pirouettes, that hard day is 4 pirouettes. You're raising that floor up. Ria's laughing at me. I don't do 9 pirouettes either, by the way. Just an example. But if you avoid those, if you avoid looking at the lows as an indefinite thing, then the next day can just be another new day that you discover yourself again and can learn more and push further.
Thank you.
On a more positive note, this is something that Christina told us way back when in a rehearsal. And this has always rang true to me. We're the lucky ones that we get to perform and do what we love and present it to others. And then they leave the theater inspired to go back to their normal lives. And that's always stuck with me. And, you know, one time I received this letter from someone who was chronically ill, and they said for those 2 hours watching our show, they forgot how much pain they were in. And all those hard days make things like that so much easier to digest. And the good days do come.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And thank you for passing that on. That's lovely. It is a great thing to remember. It's a blessing to spend one's life in dance. It really is. And I think, Angela, your comment makes me think about just one last question before I open up to the folks in the room. But what do you hope, choreographers, that you both have a connection with First State Ballet. You've been commissioned by Pasha in the past. You both said that he has opened doors for you, and this company has as well. What do you hope that the audience, our Delaware audience, will take away from seeing this triple bill program?
Like,
I love that you're doing that.
I just want the audience to be completely present in the moment, to forget everything that happened that day and just sit in the theater and enjoy these beautiful dancers, these 3 new works, and let them take them into a different dimension, into a different space, and kind of just transport them to that really powerful component of art that is truly healing. I feel like I'm such a cliche because I always say that it's like my thing, like art is so healing, but it really can heal. And as Angela was just saying with that letter she received, like if the audience is vulnerable to it, I think they'll be able to be really affected by these 3 new works and walk out in a happier mood, in a better mood, maybe in a little darker mood, something reflective. But I just want them to feel and be transported.
I agree. I mean, ditto. I think, I'm also a dance lover, and I'm a audience participant in dance as well. And when I go to performances, I always love to be challenged to think differently, or not even necessarily challenged, but just inspired to think differently. So I hope that the audience comes to this show and finds some sort of inspiration to a new thought or a new idea or a new feeling that they haven't felt before, or something that, maybe was buried in the past that comes up, whatever it might be. I hope that each person has a unique experience and is able to take that with them into their lives.
That's a beautiful message. Guests and dancers who are in the space here with us, there's been a lot of beautiful sentiment shared by the choreographers, by the dancers. Anything that rings true to you in your experience, or any questions that you have? We'll let this be the final word.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'd like to know about the day of performance. Are there any rituals or routines, or do's and don'ts, or what you eat? Do you sleep on your back, or what rituals did some of the dancers have in order to ensure that they're going to, especially if they've got like a Friday, Saturday night and then a Sunday afternoon, there's not a lot of recovery time.
I'll start. So there's one thing I always have to do before I go on stage. I always have to do it in the wings. It's called a power pose. And I have to stand with my arms and spread. And a few people join me backstage, but that's one thing I have to do. But also, usually in the days of shows, I'm so anxious and I want the time to pass. I especially night shows. I don't know what to do that day, so I end up cleaning. So I clean the entire house usually.
That's so unexpected. I love it.
On point or just regular?
Just regular.
For me, I go the opposite direction. My room turns into a tornado, I think is the closest approximation. It looks like it got hit by one. But I end up cooking a lot. I end up eating a lot. I used to eat a tremendous amount right before shows. That was my thing for years and years and years, was I would eat a pound of macaroni and cheese, right before I did my makeup. So right before I would eat a pound of macaroni and cheese, and then I would go and do the show. Don't do that anymore. I can't do it. That was a younger me. Now I probably sit, drink tea, relax as much as possible. I will probably eat granola bars and other stuff like that, but I don't tend to go too crazy right before shows anymore. I do most of my big eating early in the day, and then later is less.
Thank you. We have another question. Thank you.
In a classical work, you have the plot to drive your emotions and tell you, what your character is supposed to feel, because it's plot driven. In these contemporary pieces, both Blake and Zach referred to the audience feeling something. What's your emotional journey like in these pieces? How do you feel in these?
That's a great question. We'll just give them a moment to thought because it's a rich question. So take a moment to think about that.
I'll maybe talk about Viktor's a little bit. So typically when Viktor choreographs, it's very theatrical and it's very clear on what the storyline is and stuff like that. But for this piece, it's actually quite opposite of that. And it's more focused on just the movement itself. So as a dancer, I try to have the audience member feel the movement, if that makes sense. So like through my breath and how I'm doing the movement, instead of just doing it, trying to portray how I feel doing it to the audience. So I feel like a little different than normal pieces.
I would say for Blake's piece, it starts out slower, you have the fire crackling, and then as the music swells, our dancing also changes. So I don't know how I would describe my process, but it definitely does evolve as the piece goes on, and maybe by the music, maybe that's a driving factor. And plus what moves we're supposed to be doing with like the community of us dancers, or if you're doing something by yourself, that also evolves.
Yeah, I'll talk a little about Zach's piece. So it's a full company piece, which there's 21 of us. So there's so much like energy and unity in this piece, and we all are dancing together like pretty much most of the time, like a lot of different formation changes. There are also different like tracks to the piece. One of my favorites we call the hoedown. It's a lot of fun, and like I find myself like just having the best time. Like you can't not watch it and like not feel like, I don't know, like, oh, they're having like an amazing time up there. So it definitely changes throughout the piece, and obviously we're still learning it and working. So but yeah, that's just the unity and everyone dancing together is very powerful, and I think it'll portray very nicely.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure. I think it was really interesting you asked that question, because as classical dancers, we have the plot and we have like a character that we can hide behind and we can study it and kind of dissect the emotional arc of that character. And I struggled a lot when I first started doing contemporary, because there was none of that. It was more so of just the movement. And I had to tell myself, okay, like, well, what is the movement speaking to me? So that if I understand that, then I can relate that to the audience. What is the choreographer wanting me to do with the movement he's giving me or she's giving me? And that's the story that I'm supposed to do through the movement, because movement can speak, Body language tells a lot to people. You don't want to talk to somebody, you don't look in their direction. So, and if you do want to communicate with somebody, you can do that without not saying anything, just being present. So I think that I had to come to the realization that the movement that they're putting on us as dancers has a lot to say. We just have to accept it and kind of, let them help us and guide us into what they want. So that was a journey for me, because I was very like, no to contemporary for so long, because I didn't get it. It was like a cycle to me. And so for a long time, I had to just like, okay, well, I'm not being open right now. So let me just take a seat back and just receive it. So I think that was a great question.
Really great question. And great responses too. Thank you. It's interesting, everyone speaks to it in a little bit of a different way. So I think it really speaks to kind of the individual journey that dancers go on and have gone on with these choreographers for this program. Would you like me to wrap it, or do you want to wrap it? I want to wrap it. Okay.
They're having a buy one, get one free.
So just in case you didn't hear Joan, it's a buy one, get one free ticket. This is an amazing opportunity for Delaware audiences. I tip my hat to your artistic team, to your board, to your staff, to everyone involved for making this a part of your program. And I can't wait to see it. And I can't wait to see you guys on stage and everybody else there. Thank you for the opportunity to get to speak. Choreographers Blake and Zach, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Dancers, thank you for the beautiful work that you're doing, and all the best as you wrap up this process. Good night.